forget the Uyghur Genocide in Kashgar or whatever, Xinjiang in China. That's just fake news because a lot of people on Twitter and YouTube and whatever already went to Xinjiang, went to Kashgar, and found out that the fake news Western media genocide against Uyghurs is fake news, does not happen. But what we have over here in Canada is a real genocide against First Nation Aboriginals. This has been going on since even before Canada was created 150 something years ago. So even up to recently, people, especially in places like Saskatchewan and Manitoba, where there's a lot of First Nations, Cree people, there's a lot of Cree people and other Aboriginals in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and they're still being abused. The government is looking for reasons to take away children, saying, "Oh, the mother is alcoholic" or whatever. It's just fake news. I think children should belong to parents no matter what, unless there's a real problem. But government's just overreaching their authority, looking for every possible excuse to screw people over, take away First Nations children from their mothers and families. This is just wrong. It's 2023 and it's still happening. What we have over here in this article up here, it's a recent article, but this case goes back to 1967. This woman here doesn't look that old, but she's old. So yeah, so we're talking about a case from there's a lot of newer cases, but I'll get into that in future videos. I want to talk about this one though. So it's 1967. The typical Canadian baby boomer were teenagers in 1967. So most people in Canada were already born. The current generation of people, baby boomers, were already born. So it's not an excuse to say, "Oh, this happened before I was born," or it's not my generation. This excuse just cannot happen, because all the baby boomers were already born at this point, and this was like 1967 is like 50 or 100 years after the residential school. So this has nothing to do with the Catholic Church or whatever government that managed the residential school system. This was 1967. It's post World War II. And so this First Nations woman over here had a baby in Saskatchewan, and the doctors, nurses, and hospital administrators told her a few days after birth that, "Oh, her baby died and it's gone. You just have to move on with your life. Get discharged from the hospital. Your baby's gone. So sad, so sorry." That's the type of attitude that hospitals give First Nations people. And a few, like 20 years later, she has some hope, that thinking in knowing that her child's actually alive, grown out, because this baby was actually registered with vital statistics and applying for a birth certificate and a legal name, and her baby's legal name, first name, middle name, last name, pops up in this website that lists all of your First Nations band members. For example, when people apply to join a First Nations band and get a First Nations ID card that you flash around saying you don't have to pay tax and proof of First Nation status in Canada. So based on that name, she finds out that there's a chance that her son is alive and not dead. The hospital gave her false information. So she just wakes up from sedition, from being put in induced a coma, sedated state. So she wakes up from that, and the doctors, nurses, and hospital administrators tell, "Oh, your baby's dead, it's gone." They never showed the body, and this whole story is just deranged. But this is not a isolated case. Other First Nations women and families experience the same thing. So I just don't know like how could this happen? What a disorganized third world country Canada is, especially with in terms of First Nation people, how First Nations people get treated in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. This is just a real occurring theme. Nobody gives a crap about First Nations people. They just get discriminated, and they don't get clean water in a lot of places. So this is the real genocide. Oh, who seriously thinks it's okay to just take away someone's baby, send it somewhere else, and tell the mother that, oh, your baby's gone, it's dead, yeah, so sorry, so sad. This is just deranged, people. So the real genocide here is against First Nations, Aboriginals in Canada, not Uyghurs in Kashgar or whatever. And you know what? Uyghurs don't occupy all of Xinjiang. They only occupy the Kashgar area. But then fake news Western media keeps saying, oh, the whole population, 90% of population of Xinjiang is Han, Chinese, and other people. Well, it's always been like that. Uyghurs only live in the Kashgar or Tarim Basin area.